What's up, everybody? Matt Maran here for another weekly update. So lots of news to go over here this week. And the first story is a positive one here. First off is Road and Track interviewed the head of BMW development about the future of the manual for the BMW M cars here. And he started by saying the typical engineering response of, honestly, the pure engineering answer is you're much faster with paddles and an automatic transmission. But then he went on to say that he believes that manuals will quit being offered, in his personal opinion, eventually, but that doesn't mean he doesn't like them. This is the same guy who previously was saying how he was tired of everyone complaining about BMWs and M's not being as good to drive as the previous versions and stuff, and how he wanted to silence everyone with the new 3 Series by making it amazing, and we'll have to wait and see if that turns out to be the case. But so this guy seems to be really focused on fun and wants to be on the enthusiast side. And so this is clear also with what he's saying here about manuals. So he says, I think M4 should be the fortress of manual. So the last manual transmission which will die, it should die in an M4 as late as possible. That's my view. So how long exactly remains to be seen. So they're saying it's going to be in the new M4 and most likely the new M3 as well. And they're also suggested, at least Autoblog was, that the M4 could have a 10-year lifespan. Now, if you look at the current version of the M4, that was, I think, about, maybe like a 5-year lifespan. So 10 sounds like a stretch. So we'll have to see. If 10 years is true, they will keep this around for 10 years. Then that could potentially mean that BMW M products, at least the M4, could have a manual up until almost like 2030. Now, we did also hear in the past that the M2 has a very strong manual take rate. And so they'll continue to keep it around in that. Who knows how long the M2 will stick around, though. If there'll be a next-gen version, who knows. But at least the M4, he's saying that's going to be at least maybe the last stand here of the manual, although the M2 could do it as well. And he also did say that since they're going to keep the manual around, but the take rate's, still going to be pretty low most likely. So they're saying that they're not going to have a completely new manual. It's just going to be a refined version of the current 6-speed manual in the current M4. And it'll just be improved to handle the higher torque number that we're going to probably have here in the new M4. But anyway, that's encouraging to hear that, M is committed to keeping the manual around, and that's great. Porsche is kind of doing that as well. Of course, we have some other companies that are, standing by the manual as well. And so that's good to see. So anyway, cool to hear that. For some not so great news, at least in my opinion, Ford has filed the trademark for the Mach-E name this week, both with a dash or without a dash. And so clearly this is going to be the new name that they're planning for the Mustang-inspired EV performance crossover that they're planning. But it's still not a great name. Of course, they originally wanted to do Mach 1, and then that really threw everyone for a loop. And so they abandoned all plans and all evidence. They even suggested the Mach 1 name almost out of embarrassment. But now they're continuing on with the Mach thing. I don't know why they have this fixation on Mach, especially Mach-E. Doesn't make any sense. Mach is, speed. And so you have Mach 1, Mach 2. It's all about the numbers to go along with Mach. Having Mach-E makes no sense. And I mean, yes, it's going to be an EV, but every single electric car has to have E in it somewhere, it seems. And it's just like overkill these days already. We are not even, think about the next, 10 years here. In the 2020s, everything's going to be hybridized and everything's going to have some type of E in it so that the consumers know, oh, that means it's electric. I get that a lot of consumers are kind of dense and have to have, very obvious naming to figure that stuff out, but still just, they could do something cooler, especially if this is going to be performance and stuff. I still love the idea of the Thunderbolt name, which was floated a long time ago, or even Lightning. I know Lightning, upsets some F-150 fans, but there doesn't seem like there's any intentions from Ford of doing any type of performance sport truck. It seems like everyone's obsessed with Raptors and going off road and jumping hills and stuff with their F-150s these days instead of street performance. So I don't know if the Lightning name will ever be properly used again on an F-150. I think for this vehicle, it could fit very well as well. But if they want to be safe, do Thunderbolt, and then you're good. But seems like they're going with Mach-E. Again, no guarantees that they're going to use this name. They just filed a trademark for it. But considering how much they were obsessed with that Mach thing, I'm pretty sure they're going to try and forge ahead with this name, unfortunately. And some other Ford Performance crossover news. The Explorer ST was spied basically with no camo. So very obvious they want to parade this thing around before its official reveal, whenever that will be. I mean, you can see the badges and everything there on it. And huge thanks to my spy photographer, Brian Williams, for snapping these shots. So, you know, we've seen some spy photos last week of the regular Explorer. Now, this ST version seems to have the darker headlamps. You can see there some blacked out trim and black wheels. Not sure what engine it'll get, but I'm pretty confident it's going to have the same approach as the Edge ST, which basically was just the Edge Sport that they pumped up a little bit. And so in that case, you know, the Edge Sport had 20 more horsepower, but the same engine as the Sport version. So if we follow that same logic and you take the Explorer Sport that's currently available, that runs a 3.5 liter twin turbo V6, and it currently does 365 horsepower. So in the ST version, I would safely assume it's going to have 20 extra horsepower like the Edge ST in its transition from Sport to ST, and then, you know, that would put it at 385 horsepower. So 385, you know, I don't know if that's enough to, you know, make it an ST model. I think they're kind of cheapening the ST name from its original roots, but we'll have to see. I haven't driven the Edge ST yet, so maybe it's fantastic. I don't know, but I'm a little pessimistic about it going into it just based off the numbers and the lack of change from the Sport version. It's also rumored to probably get the 10-speed auto here for the ST version as well. Probably will be all-wheel drive, although with this new platform, same underpinnings as the Aviator, that means it could also get rear-wheel drive in addition to the all-wheel drive, but most likely I'm sure it'll be all-wheel drive for the ST version. Some other Ford news here is they're continuing to talk with Volkswagen about a partnership, and both executives have confirmed they're talking about this. They're planning on doing something, but still isn't super solid. But we do have a few more details here thanks to Reuters. And so they're reporting that Volkswagen CEO said this week that they may use Ford's unused capacity. Supposedly Ford kind of has a similar problem to GM where they have capacities at these factories that aren't being fully utilized. We know, like, for example, they're not building very many Continentals. There's not a lot of demand for those. The Flat Rock plant that also builds the Mustang, so maybe some room there, and a few other places that don't make F-150s essentially. And so anyway, they're talking about potentially using some of that unused capacity for U.S. factories to build some of these new Volkswagen electric vehicles they're planning. But Volkswagen's also confirmed they're expanding their own plant. It seems they're going in that direction first and foremost to expand their own current plant in Tennessee, and then also maybe work with Ford on building some extra stuff as well. But they might have some more negotiating power now since, you know, last week GM announced the closure of several plants because of slow selling models at those plants. So maybe Volkswagen could move into some of those, or at least pitch that to Ford, and, you know, maybe get somewhat of a better deal out of Ford. We'll have to see. But honestly, I think that would be a fantastic idea. You know, if these plants that GM wants to close and all these workers are upset, they want jobs, and you know, there's all kinds of political and corporate turmoil because of all these closures. Have Volkswagen come in. If Volkswagen wants plants, there you go. You got 5 GM plants that they don't want anymore. Keep the same workers there and just continue business as usual once these cars are ready to go. Obviously, it's not going to be ready in time for like the March closures that they're planning at GM. But, you know, maybe they take, you know, 6 or 9 months off and they can go back to work, you know, once these EVs are ready in 2020 or so. We'll have to, you know, see, but that would be kind of cool to have, I guess, Volkswagen come in and save these GM employees. But anyway, supposedly regarding the Ford-Volkswagen partnership, they're going to announce more details in January, so we'll have to wait till then to hear more. In other Volkswagen news, Reuters is also reporting that Volkswagen's strategy boss said this week that Volkswagen is going to be developing its final generation of gasoline engines in 2026, and that's when they'll start being produced before going completely to EV. And they said obviously they will continue to refine that gasoline engine for many more years after that. So it's not like 2026 is the end, it's just the beginning of that new generation of engine. And so, I mean, that means that engine, the gas will go well into the 2030s. But once that gas engine's done in the 2030s, Volkswagen's officially done with the gasoline engine, going full EV. and this is the way everything's going. It's not a fad. This is like they're winding down their plans. Everything they're investing is going into this EV, which is crazy. And although Volkswagen's motivated by this Paris Climate Agreement and kind of wanting to reduce their emissions and stuff, they're also motivated by consumer demand, because consumers, at least wealthy consumers, are very strongly excited about these EVs. Porsche had news about that this week, with Porsche's CEO telling a German business magazine that I can't pronounce, but I'll list the name there, that they had originally planned to produce about 20,000 Taycans in the first year, but said due to the positive response, we will adjust this number upwards, meaning there must be more than 20,000 pre-orders already for the Taycan before it's even been officially revealed, which is pretty crazy. But so, I mean, obviously at least Porsche fans are very excited about this, and there's tens of thousands of people lining up to pre-order this vehicle. So they want them. They want the EVs, and so these companies are going right along with that. So it's crazy stuff. I know many of you are not super excited about everything going EV, and I love gasoline engines as well, but seems like a lot of consumers are very excited about this. So anyway, interesting to see that. And continuing on with this theme, Aston Martin not only wants to start producing new EVs, next year they're going to be doing the Rapide-e, but they also want to do the same as Jaguar and even offer retrofit kits for their classic vehicles. So they revealed this 1970 DB6 Volante that has this new EV setup. And so Aston says it can bolt up to any existing Aston using the same engine and transmission mount. So you literally just drop it in, very similar to like the E-Copo Camaro that was revealed with SEMA. So you just remove the gas engine, throw the EV one in there, and then you kind of just swap like where the gas cap is. You see there's a charge port instead. And there's not any details given on the motors or batteries, but they said it'll use some of the components from the Rapide-e. Now that has dual motors for 610 horsepower and 700 pound-feet of torque, which would be way overkill for a classic vehicle like this. So probably just one of those motors, maybe half the power, like 305 horsepower would be very appropriate. Probably a smaller battery as well. Yeah, nothing else changes. The interior and stuff all stays the same. And they did say there'd be a little small screen added for battery readouts, but it's not even visible in the pictures there, so I'm not sure where that would be incorporated. But anyway, they said they're planning to start working on this in 2019 and offering it then. So cool to see that. And some other futuristic news. Waymo this week has started offering public rides in their self-driving Chrysler Pacifica hybrids in 4 areas outside of Phoenix in Arizona, in Chandler, Tempe, Mesa, and Gilbert. And so a driver is still going to be sitting behind the wheel. So it's very similar like the Uber driverless stuff. We had those in Pittsburgh here actually testing for a while there before the accident that happened where they hit a pedestrian. And so anyway, but the driver will still be behind the wheel to intervene if they need to in an emergency. Hopefully, like I said, their drivers are more attentive than the Uber ones and actually pay attention. So we'll have to see how that goes for Waymo, hopefully better than it did for Uber. But anyway, unlike the Uber test vehicles, though, those ones were actually free. If you were able to get one here in Pittsburgh, you could hop in one for free. It was just part of being a beta tester kind of with this tech. But Waymo actually charges for their service. You download their Waymo One app to request one, and then pricing is very similar to Uber and Lyft. Yeah, if you want to try it out and you're in the Phoenix area, you can download the Waymo One app and give it a try. So they said it's like apparently a few different people have ridden in these different outlets and stuff have been talking about it, and supposedly it's still not perfect and still very much experimental, which is a little terrifying considering this is on public roads with the public riding in it at this point, not just employees of these companies. But yeah, hopefully it goes well for them. Wish them all the best, but I still think this driverless stuff is a ways off before it's finally fully realized. But anyway, back to some traditional car news. So first, Chevy has revealed the 2020 Silverado HD this week with its very controversial front end there. It's very tall and angry, and I mean, I personally don't mind it, but I think it's, it is a lot of people think it is a little too much, and it is very bold for sure. They also showed a high country version, which looks a little more traditional with the chrome and stuff, but still very bold as well. And although it has some similarities to the 1500 version, Chevy says only the roof is shared. for this 2500 version, which is interesting because it does have a lot of similar panels, it seems. They didn't give any details as far as the engines, really. It did say they're going to have both a gas V8 offered as well as a Duramax turbo diesel V8, and that'll do 910 pound-feet of torque, they already have said, and a 10-speed automatic for that version. The gas V8 gets a 6-speed auto. They said the full debut is going to be in February with an on-sale date in the middle of 2019, so cool to see that. And it seems like Ram didn't want Chevy to have all the limelight this week because they basically paraded around their Ram 2500s camouflage free here with badging and everything. So they're just out there and showing it to the world. So the first one here is the Power Wagon version, which looks more sporty and aggressive and be more off-road ready, of course. But they're also caught driving around with more traditional versions with chrome bumpers and some of the base model ones and stuff. And so especially the chrome one is a little more handsome and definitely a more conservative option if you want a 2500 level truck next year. I think Ram's taking the safer approach, where Chevy's probably upsetting a lot of people, but could win some new fans too with that bold look. We'll have to see. We don't have any kind of official debut date for the Ram version here, since of course this was just spy. This isn't anything official really, but it could be Detroit in January, or if they want to go head to head with Chevy, they could reveal it at Chicago in February as well. So we'll have to wait and see. Other FCA news here is Automotive News actually got a bunch of official confirmations from FCA as far as their future product plans, which kind of were revealed partially earlier this year with their 5-year plan that FCA has been doing the past a couple of years. And anyway, the first news here is confirmation that Alfa Romeo will be getting a new compact SUV based off the Jeep Compass. Now, whatever it's going to be called, we're not sure, and we're not even sure if it's going to be coming to the States. We do know it's going to be built in Italy, and we'll be getting a plug-in hybrid option, which is very predictable. But yeah, I'm not sure if we'd get it in the States here. I think it would certainly make sense, though, to obviously expand the Alfa range. You need to have stuff other than one SUV and one sedan. So as much as the Compass underpinnings might, be bad news to some people, it'll probably most likely have a very different engine. Probably could have a lot of obviously very different exterior and interior styling, and just basically use the bones. And there's lots of other applications across FCA where they do this, where you have like the Maserati Levante, which is very much based on a Jeep Grand Cherokee, but has a completely different engine, completely different styling, dimensions. Everything is totally different, and doesn't drive like a Jeep Grand Cherokee at all. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad news just because it's based on the Compass. Anyway, moving on to some other news here from FCA. The Compass itself is actually going to also start being built in Italy here next year, and there is also going to be, or they didn't say exactly when, but I think next year. And there's also going to be a baby Jeep that is most likely going to be only for Europe, but maybe it could also be offered here in the States, but it's going to be positioned under the Renegade, so even smaller than the Renegade. I don't know how you get even smaller than the Renegade. I mean, not that the Renegade's cramped, but what's the point of having a whole new vehicle if it's only going to be like 2 inches smaller or something? It seems kind of a little bit redundant. But people love options and people love crossovers, so I guess they figure they can't lose. Yeah, there's also some news here about Fiat. The first is they're going to be getting a new EV version of the 500. There's previously been the 500e, but I guess they're doing a next-gen version of that. Also, the 500X will be getting a plug-in hybrid version eventually as well. And lastly, Maserati will be getting a smaller SUV based on the Stelvio, and it'll be something that's going to be probably rolled out here in the States, of course. And they're also going to be starting a new car production in Modena, Italy as well, which is most likely everyone's thinking going to be the Alfieri Sports Coupe and Convertible that have been on hold for some time now and will be offered both with gas engines, and a full EV version is rumored to be available as well. But anyway, there's no timeline for any of this or when exactly this is all going to happen. But anyway, interesting to hear some stuff coming down the road here from FCA. And we have some Hyundai news here. According to Autocar, they're claiming that a new version, or a version of the Santa Cruz concept truck that was shown, I think, in Detroit in 2015, that's going to be, they're trying to rush a production version as soon as possible. So Autocar talked with Hyundai's chief design officer, who said the design process has been completed for it, and they're now working on engineering it into production, getting it ready to actually start testing and stuff like that. And so based on that timeline, it's estimated it probably won't go on sale till 2020 or 2021 at the earliest. And he also did include an interesting tidbit that Kia is going to be getting a version of this as well. Yeah, but unlike the concept, they're going to be 4-door trucks instead of the 2-door, the concept there. So won't be quite as cool looking, but a lot more practical, and probably will be a lot easier to sell for people who have families and stuff like that. And it's also been rumored to be based on the new next-gen Tucson platform, which would kind of hurt its truck credentials, but we'll have to wait and see on all that. That part's just a rumor. But anyway, interesting to hear that they're continuing to work on that. And we have some more details here on the 2019 Mazda 3 this week, thanks to Autoblog, who kind of got a little more info after its official reveal last week. Because the reveal, we didn't have a ton of details, just some basics, and that's it. First, Autoblog got some details about what engines we'll actually be getting here in the States. And we're only going to get two. We're going to get the 2.5-liter engine, which is basically a carryover of the current 2.5, just slightly refined. I'll give more details on that in a second. And we'll also get the Skyactiv X engine, which we still don't have any specs for, but we do know we will be getting that. The 2.5-liter regular engine here is going to be available first, and is a slightly revised version that does 2 more horsepower and 1 more pound-feet of torque for totals of 186 horsepower and 186 pound-feet of torque, which is still very impressive for this class. So not bad numbers by any means. It's very impressive already. And EPA ratings are also available for that revised version already, of 27 in the city, 36 on the highway, and 30 combined. And that's for the front-wheel drive version. They didn't give any of those numbers for the all-wheel drive version yet, but I'm assuming it's going to be a little bit lower, just in typical all-wheel drive fashion. But that Skyactiv X engine, which is, very futuristic and cool, that's going to be coming to Europe first, and then it's going to come to America first in states that have stricter emissions regulations, they say, and then it'll eventually be sold in all 50 states. But anyway, that's going to be later in 2019 when that motor will show up. And like I mentioned last week, Mazda did confirm that the 2.5-liter turbo motor fits, the same one which just got introduced in the CX-5 and the Mazda 6, originally in the CX-9. But Mazda executives, I said this last week as well, that they're not planning a Mazda Speed version because they want to be a more mature and upscale brand, and they think that Mazda Speed is a little juvenile, which is unfortunate. But it sounds like Mazda isn't giving up on fun, because they did confirm that 2.5-liter turbo motor fits. It just wouldn't be called a Mazda Speed version. It probably wouldn't have any kind of racy styling or anything. But they're sounding like, according to, they told Autoblog, they're listening to buyers, and those buyers are what motivated them to put that turbo motor in the 6 and the CX-5, because they knew that buyers wanted them, so they put it in there. So if there's a lot of interest in the 2.5-liter turbo motor in the Mazda 3, which there already is, especially with all-wheel drive, would be amazing, a great competitor to the WRX and others. So I'm hoping they do end up putting that engine in there. So it's certainly possible. So Mazda's not being, grouches or anything. It sounds like it could happen. We could have an even more fun Mazda 3, which would be cool. The manual transmission, they also said, will definitely be offered on the regular 2.5-liter engine. They didn't say what trims or anything yet. They didn't get that specific, but it will be offered on that regular engine. And they also confirmed it will work with the Skyactiv X engine with its mild hybrid setup. And it does also, they said the manual works with all-wheel drive. So if they really want to do a WRX competitor, do the turbo motor with all-wheel drive and offer a manual in all trims. And I think you would have a lot of, really strong response from enthusiasts, which would be great. But so all that stuff is technically possible. It all works together. It's just a matter of them deciding what they want to offer and what they think people will buy. And that's something they can fine-tune from year to year. So even if it's not available in 2019, they could introduce it in the 2020 model year or something like that. We'd have to see. But they also lastly explained why they switched to the torsion beam rear suspension instead of the multi-link one of the previous Mazda 3. And they basically said ride comfort was better with the torsion beam, and it made for a little bit easier tuning, and it allowed them to kind of dial things in a little bit better, supposedly, because they said one of the engineers gave an example of there's only 1 bushing on each side of the torsion beam suspension versus 10 bushings on each side of the multi-link setup. So a lot more to fine-tune, and that could make the back end a little more twitchy and stuff. And usually that's good though, because you can fine tune for better handling that way. But supposedly for the 3, it made sense to do the torsion beam for better comfort and simplicity, which is understandable. And then according to Jalopnik, a further thing that was elaborated on at the LA Auto Show here was that the Skyactiv X technology could end up in a rotary engine application, and that is something that Mazda's vice president of R&D and design has said they're like, I guess it's a possibility. He didn't obviously confirm anything or even say they're working on anything. But we do know that Mazda is planning to use a rotary as a range extender at some point, because they've had experiments with that already. And I mean, rotary engines would be fantastic for that purpose since they're so small and compact. If they could do that with the Skyactiv X gas burning technology, that would be brilliant and make for a very, very efficient range extender, which would be cool. They did acknowledge that the rotary engine is the one thing that is unique to Mazda, and they said that uniqueness is very important to them. So sounds like they do want to focus on fun. They do want to I guess, give enthusiasts what they want, whether it's a turbo motor or, a rotary of some type. I mean, they kind of have been shooting down any possibilities of Mazda speed stuff or any kind of RX-9 or anything like that. But, with what they have, they can still have some fun combos, which is cool to see. And another fun thing that's offered, unfortunately, only for Europe right now is Honda has revealed this week the HR-V Sport, but again, only for Europe right now. And so this has the 1.5-liter turbo motor from the Civic Sport hatchback for 180 horsepower and 177 pound-feet of torque, which is a pretty nice bump considering the regular HR-V only has 141 horsepower and like 127 pound-feet of torque. So this would feel a lot sportier. And it's also even available with a manual here for this sport version. It gets upgraded shocks, slightly more aggressive looks inside and out, along with sportier seats. So I'm really hoping, we also get that here in the States. We do get the Civic Sport hatchback, and I think people really enjoy that. And so, I mean, with how hot crossovers are and people wanting performance as well, I think an HR-V Sport would fit in very well here. So we'll have to see if they offer it. But anyway, cool to see that for Europe. Volvo has announced pricing for the V60 wagon this week. We have the base model here with 250 horsepower starting under $40,000, which is pretty competitive. $39,895 including destination. So that's pretty good pricing. It's about $5,000 less than an Audi A4 all-road, so pretty competitive there. If you do want the T6 version, which has the all-wheel drive, that's $4,500 extra, so that puts you right around just under $45,000. You still get 316 horsepower out of that engine, so pretty sweet competitor to even stuff like the Kia Stinger or something like that. Anyway, prices go up from there, of course, if you go for the higher trims. There's the Inscription and the more luxurious versions, the R Design and stuff like that. And they did say that for the US, we're not getting the T8 version yet, which is really strange. That's the plug-in hybrid one with 400 horsepower. Considering Volvo's saying they want to go full electrified range, I think next year. Not offering it here yet is strange, but I'm sure we'll get it eventually. But anyway, interesting to see that pricing. Another vehicle this price is Toyota has priced the 2019 Prius all-wheel drive E that they revealed last week in LA. And so it's going to be starting at $27,300. And so to put that into perspective, it's about $1,400 more expensive than a regular Prius. So a regular Prius, they start with a base L Eco model, and that's $24,690. But the all-wheel drive version, its lowest trim is the LE, and a regular LE is, like I said, about $1,400 less than the all-wheel drive version. So not a bad upcharge to have the all-wheel drive components there, and probably well worth it for those who need it especially. Other Toyota news here is, according to Auto Guide, during an interview that was going on with Toyota's general manager Jack Hollis, there was like a roundtable interview with a bunch of people asking questions. He said during that an all-wheel drive Corolla is being considered. Since the Corolla, this new one, shares the same platform as the Prius, and the Corolla just got the hybrid from the Prius, they could very easily add the all-wheel drive E version of the Prius that we just saw last week. They could add that those components to the Corolla as well if they wanted to, and if it seemed like people wanted that. So it would that would mean it would only be a hybrid all-wheel drive version if they did do an all-wheel drive Corolla. Probably wouldn't be for the gas-only version. But they did also add there's no plans to offer a hatchback version with the hybrid component because they supposedly have other special editions coming instead for the Corolla hatch, which has been teased before. Everyone's been asking for a higher performing version to compete with, all the other hot hatches out there. And it sounds like Toyota is keen to, potentially do something like that. We'll have to wait and see, but they've been hinting this several times now over the past year here. And so yeah, we'll keep our fingers crossed for a faster version of the hatch. Speaking of performance Toyotas though, Toyota Canada filed a trademark for the GR Gazoo Racing logo here this past week, which is likely going to be put on some version of the Supra, which will hopefully be, it's actually confirmed. We're going to be seeing the Supra finally officially revealed in 5 weeks or so here at the Detroit Auto Show in January. So don't have much longer to wait here to finally see the Supra, and hopefully have specs and everything at that point too, and hopefully they don't keep us in the dark on that. But if nothing else, we finally at least see the full production version. So that's exciting, and it sounds like it's going to be a big show for Toyota and for Lexus as far as performance stuff goes, because Lexus, the last news here this week is they have teased the 2020 RCF Track Edition that they're going to be showing and debuting at the Detroit Auto Show in January. They just have this single image here of this big carbon fiber wing with the F logo actually weaved into it, it seems, which is pretty cool. And Lexus also said, along with this teaser, it's going to be the most powerful Lexus since the LFA. That means it's going to be more powerful than the 471 horsepower of the LC500, which is the current, champ. So it's likely going to be a refined version of that same engine that's both in the RCF and the LC500. But how much more power remains to be seen. Now, since they said the most powerful Lexus since the LFA, that means it'll probably do less than the LFA's 552 horsepower. But somewhere between, 471 and 552, a nice round 500 would be cool. But we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, exciting to see they're going to be coming out with that. But yes, that's it for all the news this week, guys. So anyway, let me know your thoughts and everything in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Take care.